had my first criticism, and I've been referred to, which is great. I've been referred to as heretical, which is fun because we can talk about heresy. Um, we can't conceptualize a lot of stuff that's out there. Like I said, the realm of knowledge is 1/10, so there's a lot of stuff you can't even conceptualize. But there is a last point where things are as close to something as you can get. Like, so you can't ever conceptualize something like God at all. Ever conceptualize something like God. But there is a like final points. There's points in nature where you can. It's as good as it could ever be given unto you. Like a sunset or a kid smiling. But to me, like, an old man, like the really, really wise is just kind of the original. You can't bullshit the bullshitter. Like a craftsman extraordinary. He built a machine. It was a machine. Was a machinist that built a machine. Some sort of craft to mankind. But just it helps to have a mature concept of faith when you consider it as a maturity objective out there in metaphysics and maturity, and you can get over a lot of self-adultery and a lot of immaturity and beating around the bush with heresy accidentally even, by being mature, by having a mature conceptualization of objective metaphysics. People don't like talking about metaphysics at all. They hate the concept, but it's for that very reason. So heresy to me is necessary, and God, being this very wise thing, expects it. And like I said, the book of Job already contains all the greatest arguments and heretical comments you can ever bring against him. Like I said, you can't bullshit the bullshitter. Don't try and rip on the original rip, or something like that. Like, he already knows, or it would already be known, anything you could possibly bring against him. He gave you your capacity for logic and reason, so he already knew everything you're going to be able to possibly bring against him. So there's a lot of leeway and there's a lot of grace in heresy, for being just immature, young. Like, in The Simpsons, when they say technically you can't even go to the bathroom, it's very true. So, like, when you're a kid, all those years, and you're going to the bathroom and you don't even care, and you're eating bread, like, that's, oh, he's a heretic. Like, technically, even no idea how close you would be acting to actual heresy as outlined in the Bible. But it's not like kids are smitten and smoking for, like, using a toilet or eating bread. So God's like not like stupid, and it's adulterous to pretend like God's stupid, or you can get away with things, or that God doesn't already have this omnipotence of knowledge and understanding. It's very silly and immature and insulting to think that God's some sort of machina machine, or some sort of something that's not as intelligent as that which is being created before it. So I always think, like in Cub Scouts, I went to Cub Scouts as a kid, and sometimes you get badges, and sometimes the badges are set up into like levels of hierarchies. Like, you get 3 badges for your something, and you get like a level of within levels, like Masonry. It's like Cub Scouts for grown ups. But I always think there's like that heresies and some of those necessary badges you get in Cub Scouts that you necessarily need to commit to, like 2 or 3 levels of heresy when you're becoming a mature theist. You're going to question God at some point. That's heretical, even in the first place, to necessarily pose the question and wondering. You're going to say some stuff, you're going to bring it up in conversation with your friends maybe, and you're going to have a heretical conversation, and somebody's going to turn around and say something heretical, like, screw that and all. And there's going to be about 3 necessary badges or graces that is necessarily given unto everybody for exposition of theology, or purity in theology, purity in metaphysics. Immanuel Kant, don't know why I just skipped on to Kant, but he refined argument so that our arguments, even about God, could be held valid. And he said they never really get anywhere. They always just run into the same antinomizations and problems that run down the lines. He got called a heretic as well for just being so clever and saying that God is too great to be conceived of, that it's something beyond our conception, and he got called. There's no way we can imagine it in itself. I said earlier on about virtues in itself, which is an interesting concept. Things in itself, like thinking about a mug in itself, or thinking about the sound of an ice cream van in itself. Things in themselves are different to things in time. Like, things, you might say this thing weighs 38 grams, but there's no weight attached to an object. There's no weight within it in itself. That's when you combine it with gravity, then it has a potential quantity of weight. So weight isn't in the object itself, and there's purity and ways of looking. But I don't know how the heck I got into that. Things themselves, virtues in themselves, which are interesting if you look at virtues in themselves and virtues as expositions. This is where there's an objective and a very a lower subjective decalogue and things like this. Just do there's things within themselves and things without. It's Yakin and Boaz, as I refer to it in Masonry, with the within and without, two kind of essential ways of looking at things, conceptualizing things. You see that in the pillars J and B, Yakin and Boaz, within and without. But yeah, that's final notes on heresy. Heresy is really only really when you're doing something that you know is you're not supposed to do it purposely. I mentioned before, it's a very likely occasion you'll consume leaven, or you'll cook leaven or burn leaven even accidentally in your life, burn your toast. And it's a very unlikely event that you'll boil a goat alive in its mother's milk. But if you were to even experimentally or scientifically go out and do that, to boil a kid in its mother's goat, then that's, even just as an experiment to see what happens, that's heresy. Like when you purposefully are doing something you were told not to do, purposefully. So like you have a grace for, like, give us this day our daily bread, and it's okay to you have a grace. A Christian, I think Judaic people might eat flat bread or leaven-free bread, or that's why gluten-free is such a thing, because it actually has an effect. They just take the gluten out of it. That's why gluten-free food is a technicality. It's an affectation of what happens when you eat leaven. But you may go out and eat leaven, but like the grace is attached to that you're not purposefully, spitefully shoving loads of bread into your face in spite for God, though I imagine you could, and it'd be very adulterous and stupid. Actually, wouldn't even be adulterous, it'd be sub-adulterous, it'd be infantile and stupid. Just stuff loads of bread in your face and do it as an act of spiting or heretical, purposefully. That's not what I mean, heresy. Like, God knows you're going to get tired. Like, God knows you're going to get tired in your life, and you're going to get worn out in your life, and you're going to suffer jihad in your life. And you're going to go shake your fist at the sky, and you're like, man, I'm doing my best here. Like, I'm really pushing it, and I'm not seeing any leeway. And that can be considered heresy to even turn around and question, like, the unfolding path before you. Like, how is this the way? Like, and not have faith in that way. But yeah, having faith in that way, belief is a very strong thing. If you believe in the way the world and it will unfold in a way, it will unfold for you. If you don't believe it does, then it actually won't unfold. Belief is a very strange and unique and powerful thing. It's very hard to change your beliefs. So there's a very strange fear as a belief, and if you take fear as a belief into your life, it has a manifestation. You're likely to get injured or hurt or damaged more often because you accepted a belief or fear. If you don't believe in fear and you live beyond fear, you can go like Evel Knievel style, and all these kind of stuntmen and daredevil and illusionists. They used to play on little tricks and technicalities of belief and faith. But yeah, I was only supposed to talk about heresy. I'm not an heretic. I studied Torah. I studied a lot of the abstract even of law, not even the explicit law, the explicit law and the abstract. I read Maimonides a good bit, commentary on Torah and scripture. I really have I call myself a Taoist more so than even a Catholic, because I love Taoism. No, I really don't in any way consider myself heretical. Talking about QBL might be considered a little bit heretical, because I would, like, at some point I'm going to have a tree of life here and I'm going to talk about it. It's going to be black and white, and people will say, oh, you're not supposed to really talk about these things explicitly and demonstrably, but it's like Cobain said, it's okay if your will is good, and we're good, God willing. I never practiced or did any. I studied a lot of mysticism, a heck of a lot of mysticism and a lot of ritualism, but I never was interested. I just wanted to see what they were doing, more so than to get an abstract, more so than ever commit myself stupidly to any sort of acts, because you never know if they could be heretical or not. Someone might tell you to eat some bread at a ritual kind of thing and make a thing out of it, and it's accidentally, like, I wouldn't do anything on the ground, so you'd never know what would be offensive or what could be heretical, because in any scientific situation, in any closed case scientific body, you'd never know what actual affectations are currently taking place, all the number of affectations, so you could never know what you're doing really. So I just would be cautious, even in science, not to do it. Science can be very offensive, I think, and I think people realize even how much science kind of fend and probe and look a little too far into life, that you don't need to look into that close or that far into life, or that be that penetrating. You know it's going to be amazing anyway. And anyway, all you're going to get out of science is a quantity. So I don't know why people actually even looked at science for metaphysics or any ulterior rationality, when the very essence of science claims that we're only investigating in quantitative information, and no qualitative information can be induced or should be induced from it. So it's silly to be scientific or scientological even. But yeah, that's on Heresy, not a Heretic. I do like I never listened to when I was a kid, the Heretic Anthem by Slipknot, because I thought it was blasphemic, but actually 555 to 666 is very Christian music. If you had 555 and 666, peck the eyes out of the Heretic. So I like that song, but no, I'm not a heretic, not an heretic at all. Much more interesting. I can do another thing on atheism, the impossibility of atheism. I'll do another skit on this, and it's not a 10-minute video here, but atheism is actually impossible, and I'll prove that in another video, so something to look forward to.